Hi, this is Dr. Allo. So if you don't want to watch a 2.5-hour lecture about all of the exercise studies, I've got a quick, concise presentation for you. So first of all, if you want the long and short of it, just do it. Exercise is good for you in so many different ways. Almost every study we went through demonstrated that exercise was better than not doing any exercise. And not only that, prevented cardiovascular disease, prevented a lot of cancers, so many different things. We know that anybody who does resistance training or cardio, their insulin sensitivity improves, their cholesterol goes down, their body fat percentage can go down, their blood pressure goes down, diabetes, all those things improve. So if you want the full details, go and take a look at that lecture. Now, we go over 4 basic exercise modalities: flexibility, stability, and power. Those are things that we didn't cover. We mainly covered aerobic or endurance type training and then resistance training. So those are the 2 main ones that we went over. The most important thing that you want to get out of that lecture, and if you watched the diet lecture too, the most important thing is that diet trumps everything. Regardless of what exercise you do or how much exercise you do, if you're not dieting and you're not in a calorie deficit, nothing matters. All the studies we looked at with regards to diet and exercise show that if you're in a calorie deficit and you're losing weight, then you get all the benefits. Now, there are different approaches to that and different ways to achieve that, but you have to be in a calorie deficit. And regardless of anything else, with regards to all the charting and everything we demonstrated, that the calorie deficit alone, regardless of whether you aerobic exercise or strength train or do whatever else, if you are in a calorie deficit, you're going to lose weight, no matter what exercise program you decide to do. So if your goal is just to lose weight, you have to nail your diet. Nothing else even matters. At the beginning of that lecture, we went through a whole bunch of studies talking about is exercise an efficient way to lose weight? And for the most part, you will lose weight initially. We all have that friend that started weightlifting or started running or started hiking or biking or whatever, and they lost a bunch of weight, but then you notice 2-3 months, a year later, they're back to their original weight. So all of the studies that we looked at, they do cause weight loss up front. If you start an exercise program, you'll lose a little bit of weight up front, and it might be a significant amount of weight, depending on how intense or how into it you are. But you will lose weight up front, but it's temporary, usually about 3 months. All the long-term studies past 3 months showed that there was weight regain or that they stayed weight neutral. So don't think that exercise is how you're going to lose weight. It's very, very difficult to manually burn off calories. Running off calories is hard. A 200-pound person, if they ran at a 7-mile-per-hour pace, which is really hard to do, you'll burn about 1,200 calories. And if you do it at about a 10-mile-per-hour pace, you burn about 800 or 900. The lighter you are, the less calories you burn. The heavier you are, the more calories you burn. Now, there's also this constrained model. Exercise does not indefinitely burn more and more calories the more you do it. Otherwise, you could run 18 hours a day and burn off 20,000 calories. That's not how it works. There's a constrained model. We used to think that the more exercise you do, the more calories you burn. But now there's this constrained model. We know that you'll burn a certain amount of calories up to a certain point. Then there's a plateau, and your body starts taking away energy from other activities. Your NEAT or your daily, fidgeting, walking, other stuff goes down. Your body adjusts. So you cannot just run forever and burn off more calories, or lift weights forever and burn off more calories. There's a constraint to that. So let's say for the first 30 minutes of you walking or running, you'll burn 200 to 300 calories. Any additional minutes after that, you burn less and less. Your body sort of caps it. There's this capped or constrained model. We also know one of the benefits of exercise is that it helps you regulate your appetite better. When you exercise and you have that stimulus, your body's better at regulating your appetite. It knows when it needs calories and it knows when it doesn't need calories a lot better than someone who's sedentary. So that's actually one of the key points for exercise is the appetite dysregulation improves. You'll get better appetite signaling, and you'll be able to know how much to eat or not eat a lot better. There's also the concern of adaptation to exercise. When someone first runs a mile, it's very, very difficult. But then you get better at it. Your cardiovascular endurance improves, your body becomes more efficient. you get better at it. And when we've been able to demonstrate this with people wearing the oxygen and CO2 masks and seeing how many calories they burn doing this, your body gets better at it, and you get better at it. So you can use less and less energy doing that. We also know that resistance training and putting on muscle does increase your basic metabolic rate. Now the studies go back and forth. Some say for every pound of muscle you add, you burn an extra 6 calories, maybe 7 a day, or like 3 times more than what you did before. There are some studies that show that maybe you burn 30 to maybe up to 60 calories extra for every pound of muscle you put on. So if you put on some muscle by lifting weights and eating a little bit more calories to put on some muscle, you can ultimately raise your basic metabolic rate. And the studies kind of go back and forth on that one, but we do know that ultimately if you do put on muscle, even if your basic metabolic rate doesn't go up, when you actually do activities to use those muscles, since you have more of them, you will be burning more calories and using more calories. So you could actually eat more and stay at the same weight, or eat the same and lose a little bit of fat. So that's another advantage. We also looked at the fitness versus fatness exercise studies. We found that people who are a little bit overweight, or maybe even fall into the obese category, if they're fit and they run marathons and 5Ks and all that, or lift, weight train, whatever, their cardiovascular mortality and risk factors are equal to the people who are normal weight, but are also at the same fitness level. So there was this debate at some time where, you cannot be healthy if you're overweight. You can be up to a certain point. You can't have a BMI of like 40 or 45, be morbidly obese. That's why it's called morbidly obese, because ultimately it does affect your health. But if you're a little bit overweight, maybe even slightly into the obese category, but you're fit, that's okay. Your cardiovascular mortality and cardiovascular risk is the same as a normal weighted person who is just as fit as you are, or on your same fitness level. We also looked at some studies that showed that aerobic training by itself, like if you're a runner, will reduce your lean body mass, you lose muscle, and reduces bone mineral density. At the hip, they studied hips with DEXA scanning. Your bone mineral density goes down, and your muscle, your lean mass goes down. That's not something you usually want. If you add resistance training to it, you don't lose as much lean mass, and your bone mineral density actually goes up, and you can actually put on lean mass. If you're exercising with resistance and weights correctly, you actually improve your lean body mass and your bone mineral density, which is huge, especially in the elderly population, which that's a lot of my patients. We also looked at moderate intensity training, aerobic training, versus low intensity, steady state training. If you're walking on a treadmill 2 to 3 miles an hour versus 5 to 6 miles an hour, versus HIIT training, where somebody does intense explosive movements like an all-out sprint for 15, 20 seconds, then walks for 2 miles. HIIT training versus much lower. They found that overall HIIT training will burn more calories in a shorter amount of time. Low intermittent steady state training burns more fat. It might not be the same amount of total calories, but you will burn mostly energy from fat. And then moderate intensity training is kind of that sweet spot where you start off burning you will burn more energy from fat, but then your overall calorie burn will also be kind of a little bit closer to HIIT. So it's kind of in the middle, and that's kind of the sweet spot where cardiovascular mortality also goes down. We also looked over some studies showing that if you add resistance training to cardiac rehab, after somebody has a heart attack or has CHF or is newly diagnosed open heart surgery, whatever, we always put people on cardiac rehab. It's usually an exercise program that's all aerobic training on bikes, treadmills, whatever it is, ellipticals. They found that if you add resistance training, like lifting weights, squats, deadlifts, bench press, whatever, even light weights, appropriate for that person's age and coordination levels and stability, that actually is considered safe, and also can help improve cardiovascular mortality even more so than just aerobic training. We've also found that any exercise, especially resistance training, but any kind of exercise, whether it's aerobic or not, definitely improves aging. You will look younger, your cardiovascular markers will be younger, your inflammation will be lower. I have a lot of friends or even patients that have lost a bunch of weight, and they actually look younger and healthier. They can do more, they can walk, they're more functional. So aging is actually improved or slowed down by adopting an exercise program. We also looked at studies comparing fast rates of weight loss versus slow rates of weight loss. And this is all with weight training or aerobic training. The slower you lose the weight, the more likely you are to keep your lean body mass. Athletes, or even young people, or even some of my old elderly patients, sarcopenia is a real thing. Sarcopenia is loss of muscle mass. When you lose weight slowly and gradually over time, you lose a little bit of weight, maintain, lose a little bit more weight, maintain. The slower you lose weight, the more likely you are to hang on to muscle and bone mineral density. So we definitely want to lose weight slowly and gradually. And all the studies show also, psychologically speaking, you're more likely to maintain that weight loss if you did it gradually and slowly and put in the effort. Or if you do like a crash diet, you're eating 800-900 calories a day, exercising 3 hours a day, every day, twice a day, you lose 30 pounds in a month, you gain it all back and even more. So that's huge. You want to lose your weight very, very slowly over time so that you maintain muscle mass and bone mineral density. One of the studies that we looked over showed that your peak VO2 max, or peak oxygen consumption, actually was better in the resistance training group. Now this seems a little counterintuitive. They compared aerobic to a control group that did nothing, to a resistance training group, to a combination group that did both. The group that did resistance training actually improved their oxygen consumption better than the aerobic training group. Obviously, if you did both, it's about the same. All the studies in the past have shown that aerobic training, running, for example, actually improves your oxygen consumption the most, but it also comes with a cost. You lose lean body mass, you lose muscle, you lose bone mineral density. Now, we're not talking about somebody who does cardio every once in a while. We're talking about people who are endurance athletes or run marathons or run a lot of miles per week. We're not talking about the guy or the gal who's just occasionally running for 10-15 minutes on a treadmill once or twice a week. We're talking about severe, intense type of cardio who lose the lean body mass and lose the bone mineral density. We also looked at some studies that showed that the overall body fat percentage goes down the most in groups that did aerobic exercise plus weight training. When the two were separated, though, they lost body fat percentage, but not as much as the combination. So highly recommend doing both. So my final conclusions in that talk, and how to give your patients or friends or whatever it is a prescription for adopting an exercise program. Number one, you got to get your diet straight. Nothing else matters if your diet is not on point. You have to be in a calorie deficit so that weight is coming off. Now, for some of my patients that are extremely obese and overweight, they can't even get out of a chair or get out of the couch or can't even walk across the room. The most important thing is to get weight off with diet first. You got to get off 5-10% of your body weight first before you can even do anything. I have a lot of patients, when we talk to them, they say, "Doc, how do you expect me to exercise? I can barely get out of a chair." Good. So you don't need to actually get out of a chair to lose weight. You got to cut your calories, though. Get your calories down, lose 5, 10, 15% of your body weight, then start with a brief walk. Walk to the bathroom and back. When that's easy, go for 5 minutes, go for 7 minutes. Start walking down the street, walk on a treadmill, whatever it is. Start with something very, very simple. Any amount of activity is going to increase your metabolism and get your metabolism ramped up, especially if you've been more sedentary. Now, people who are more active, the more they adopt more activity, it's not going to have as much of an effect as somebody who's very sedentary, obviously. But if you've basically been sedentary, start with something. And that something should be at least walking. For my patients who are only 30 to maybe 50 pounds overweight, start a walking program every day, walk after every meal, walk for 40 minutes, walk for an hour a day, maybe more, 2-3 times a day, and then start a resistance program. You got to start lifting weights. It'll increase your muscle mass, which can increase your basic metabolic rate. It'll increase the amount of functionality. Strength translates into everything. If you're trying to get out of a chair and you're pushing up with your arms, if your body, your upper body and lower body were stronger, you can do that better. If you're trying to close a door, pick up a milk jug, take books up a flight of stairs, whatever it might be, strength translates into almost any day activity. Imagine your kids want you to help them build a tree house or build a fireplace or something. You need strength to be able to lift some of those raw materials. And even just cooking around the house for some of my patients is very difficult. So definitely strength translates into almost all activities of living. So start adding resistance training if you start with the cardio, with the walking. As time goes on, don't add more walking. Add more resistance training. Start lifting more weights and do it more times a week. Try to do it 3, maybe 5 days a week if you can. My younger patients, you could almost do it every day. And then scale back on the cardio. Do it once a week, 10-15 minutes. Running at a moderate intensity on the treadmill is probably enough. Now, if you're like a competitive bodybuilder type person, you could probably get very lean with just diet alone. Keep resistance training heavy to keep your muscle mass lose the weight slowly so you retain as much muscle as possible. And then add cardio more towards the end of your training to just kind of get off those last few pounds. And it's just walking, really low intensity, steady state cardio will burn off the last, few inches of fat. So I hope this is helpful. It's kind of a summary. If you want to watch the entire thing, it's about an hour and a half long. And, the link will be below. Definitely share this with all your friends, but that's kind of the summary of everything we know about exercise to date. Of course, there's more research and more things coming out every day, but definitely this is the most recent updates on exercise and research on exercise. So share this with all your friends, subscribe, and hit notifications.